Jesus and see what God has told you about, to see what God is revealing to you, to see if you're ready for Christmas. And everybody asks that question, right? And are you ready for Christmas? And the answer is usually what? No. Has Christmas arrived and you're trying to catch up? Do you feel like that? Maybe we should ask that. Are you? Have you been run over by Christmas yet, and you're playing catch up? Right? Has Christmas, moved on? I was in a store yesterday, and I walked through, and I came around the corner, and there was all this Christmas stuff, and then there was New Year's stuff, and then there was Valentine's Day stuff, and I was like, wow.
No Easter yet?
Yeah. So our life gets so regimented to say, on to the next, on to the next, on to the next, right? So what does it mean for us to seek Jesus and not just survive Christmas or get to Christmas or think we have everything planned out? What would that look like? And that's what we've been talking about, and I've been using different places in Scripture, and today I'm going to use Psalm 69 to answer, how can we find Jesus at Christmas? And the first thing that we discover when you look at Psalm 69 is you honor God through how you live. Listen to what the psalmist says. Then I will praise God's name with singing. I will honor him with thanksgiving. And you go, well, that's a Thanksgiving psalm. No, it's a life psalm that says this is how we do it. We praise and we honor God. And if anything, Christmas teaches us this kind of attitude, this kind of heart, this kind of desire. Because Christmas is not where you're at. Christmas is not who you're with. Christmas is not what your circumstances are. Right? If you read the Christmas story, right? Joseph and Mary don't get to be where they think they're going to be for what we would call Christmas, right? Their lives interrupted, their schedules changed. They don't get to be where they think they're going to be. Their circumstances aren't what? Because someone over them, the government's dictating they have to do this thing. So nothing turns out. But the question isn't, what are your circumstances? What's going on in your life? Is it a perfect Hallmark Christmas? Here's the deal. It's none of that stuff. It's how do you respond to what is right in front of you in that moment. I've met people who they lament that they're only going to be with 2 people for Christmas. And I'm going, you're missing what's right in front of you. You're living with the Christmas past. Right? Well, I remember when everybody could be here. That's not what's this year. Don't blow what's this year because you're worried about what used to be. Don't blow this year because you're planning what will be. This Christmas, we get to worship with construction stuff. It's exciting. This is what we get this year. And we just need to embrace that and enjoy it. And so no matter what's going on in your life, and when I thought about this and I thought about the Christmases, I spent a bunch at my parents' house. But I've spent Christmases at nursing homes. I spent Christmases in the hospital. And I've spent Christmases at the funeral home. And I've spent Christmases in all kinds of... I've spent Christmases in other states. I spent Christmases with people I didn't know. I've spent Christmases all over the place, and it didn't make it any less of a Christmas. It's because the psalmist says, whatever's going on, you find a way to praise and honor God with thanksgiving. And it seems to me we can find Jesus at Christmas if we take that attitude into our life. Second thing is you obey God rather than asking for forgiveness. And what do I mean by that? Listen to what the psalmist says. For this will please the Lord more than sacrificing cattle. If I praise God and I embrace him, I honor God more than offering a cow. And why did they do that? To make the wrongs right. To be cleansed and renewed and forgiven. This will please the Lord more than sacrificing cattle, more than presenting a bull with its horns and hooves. And so really what the psalmist says is responding to what God says and doing it is more important than me being forgiven. And that's weird for us because we live on the other side of the cross and we say, I mean, when we think about Easter, we think it's all about Jesus dying and it's all about His forgiving us on Good Friday. And then we think it's all about the resurrection. But when we find Jesus at Christmas, it says, all we have to do is respond to what God has shown us. And that's enough. And it's more important, doing that is more important than me wanting to be forgiven. God will forgive us. But responding to what God says and doing it is more important. And that's the most important thing. It's more important than the Christmas Eve service. It's more important than the forgiveness. It's more important than the ceremony. It's more important than the moment of singing Silent Night. See, responding to God and doing what He asks is the most important thing. And the psalmist, when he was standing there and praising God, he says, I'm going to give you this praise and I'm going to give you this thank, and it's more important than all the sacrifices I could ever bring. Do you know when you respond where God is at, it's more important than the God, please forgive me, God, please forgive me, God, please forgive me, God. All the ones you'll ever utter in your life. That moment when you say, I'm here, I'm yours, yes. My heart, my life, who I am is yours. That's the more powerful moment. We're so worried about being okay that sometimes we miss knowing the God who makes us okay. See the difference? The psalmist said, God, I want to respond to you. I want to do what you ask. Here's the third thing. We humble ourselves before God. The psalmist says, you yield yourself and you get humble before God. He says this, the humble will see their God at work and be glad. Let all who seek God's help be encouraged. The Christmas story is full of humility. Joseph had to be humble and listen to what the angel said to him and change his whole plan of how he was going to deal with Mary and what they were going to do and how life was going to turn out, right? He had to make a detour to his plan. Are some of you, do you ever have problems detouring your plans? Like, do some of you wish you could be those carefree people who just do willy-nilly whatever they want and just fly all over the place? I don't know what that's like. I never not have a plan. My plans have plans. My plans have alternate plans. Right? Do some of you identify with that? And so Joseph had to change his plan because God said, hey, I'm in this and I'm working in it. It's going to be okay. Mary had to change her plan. She had to say, I'm the Lord's servant, whatever you want. I mean, that's the powerful confession of Mary, right? When the angel shows up and she says, I'm the Lord's servant, whatever you want to do, God. You do it through me. Everybody in this story, Jesus is in the manger. Look, Christmas Eve, we're going to have a manger there. We love our manger. People have found out we have a manger and they like our manger and they're borrowing our manger. We had to get our manger back for Christmas Eve. So I don't even know who made that thing. It's cool. It's really cool. But our manger will be there at Christmas Eve. What's funny to me is the manger is used out of necessity. The manger is the backup plan. Oh my gosh, we're having a baby tonight. Where can we put the baby? That'll do. Like, we make it glorious and wonderful and sanitized. Do you think the manger was sanitized? Sorry, I'm looking at my wife. We had a moment the other day. It was awesome. She had 9 packages of wipes in her hand. And I turned to her and I said, you are a wipe hoarder. Who needs that many wipes? Well, you know, she's prepared, right? Do you think Joseph and Mary busted out the sanitizing wipes and said, we're going to wipe down the manger, it's going to be okay? No, it was a change of plans, right? And it was totally like, hey, this is what we got to use right here, right now. And it's going to be okay. God will show up in the midst of that. See, the Christmas story is full of times when we humble ourselves and say, God, I don't fully understand it. I don't fully get it. But God, I'm willing for you to work and use me. This Christmas, more than your presents being all wrapped, more than everyone being there, more than having the right meal at the right time, and it be just like everybody wants, could you say, God, I'm here for whatever you want? See, finding Jesus starts with our attitude, not our requests, and especially not with more information. Here's the fourth thing the psalmist says: share everything with God. Share everything with God. Here's Psalm 69:33. For the Lord hears the cries of the needy, and he does not despise imprisoned people. God says, I know where you're at, and I know what you're going through, so bring whatever you have to me. God invites you to bring whatever you have this Christmas. And I don't know if it's joy or sorrow or concern or stress or whatever it is, God says, bring it here. We love to make Christmas all be about joy, and we should be joyful. But the truth is, many of our lives aren't filled with joy. They're filled with struggle. They're filled with challenge. They're filled with something that doesn't make the moment feel like we think the moment should feel, right? And God says, bring that here. Because God understands your situation. God understands your circumstances. Share what you have at Christmas. And when I say share, you think a nice present that's wrapped neatly. And God says, yeah, share it. Bring the mess. Bring your hurt. Bring your pain. Bring this Christmas that doesn't look like Christmas to you, but it is Christmas. Bring it here. Remember, Joseph and Mary were told by the government, you can't be where you're at. Now, it wasn't Christmas yet, but they're told, you got to go to this place. And while you're there, and your wife's expecting, she's going to have a kid in a place that isn't sanitized, that isn't the place you thought, and that's going to be where I show up. So when in the middle of your undone plans and your imperfections, where you don't think Jesus would be. And here's what it says. At that time, the Roman Emperor Augustus decreed that a census should be taken throughout the Roman Empire. And this was the first census taken when Quirinius was governor of Syria. And all returned to their own ancestral towns to register for this census. So let the image of the perfect Christmas die. Find Jesus in unexpected places. Right? Jesus, it just cracks me up because we so do this, and I get that we appreciate it. But Jesus is not in places like the Hallmark movie. Right? Jesus is not in Winter Valley. Jesus is not in Holly Cabin. And Jesus is not in Spruce City. Like, have you seen these Hallmark movies and every town's named some wonderful name like that and all those kinds of things? Look, and so we like that and we build into that, but that's not really where Jesus is born. Jesus was born in an unfamiliar place, while on the move, with things not settled, and Jesus was found in an unexpected place, because someone else said so. This Christmas, I invite you to find Jesus in unexpected things. Maybe someone won't make it. Maybe something unexpected happens. Maybe you have to travel. Maybe there's stuff going on in your family and it's not what you thought it was going to be like. But I know this. We find Jesus in that stuff. And Jesus was in that. So here's the second thing. Find Jesus in familiar places. Jesus can be found in unfamiliar places, but it can also be found in familiar places. Listen to what it says. And because Joseph was a descendant of King David, he had to go to Bethlehem in Judea, David's ancient home. So, look, Joseph had heard all the stories that we're in the line of David. Your great grandfather was a king. and we lived here, and then he took the throne. And, you know, do you guys know the story of your family? Do you ever, as a kid, try to ignore it, but get told the story over and over and over and over again? So that becomes familiar to you. Guess what? God is in familiar things too. And he traveled there from the village of Nazareth in Galilee. Nazareth's where he lived. He knew that place. And then he went to a place that his ancestors knew. So God shows up in the familiar stuff. God shows up in the traditions. God shows up in your heritage. God shows up in the stories. You know, whenever it is. And the familiar things. My parents aren't here. They're traveling, and they're in California with my sister. And so we were thrilled that they could go. So normally we do Christmas on my side of the family on the 26th. Just because usually everybody's kids are all grown now. We all have our own families and other stuff. And we got to go places. And so we do it on the 26th. Well, it's not going to be on the 26th. And it's not going to be at Mom and Dad's. They're all going to invade my place on January 1st. So, yay. It's exciting. And they're all going to be here. So, it'll be in a little unfamiliar place because they've never been to where I live now. And yet, it's going to be familiar because it'll be the same cast of characters telling the same stories, doing the same stuff in the same way, dealing with the same grief. And it'll be us. You know, God shows up in that stuff. In the familiar stuff. Whatever your tradition is, and it's never too late to start a new one. It's never too late for God to use you, or to speak to you, or to be in you, or to show up at those things that you do. And this year as a church, we're going to sing Silent Night in a different place. But it's still going to be us. And it's going to be the same God with us. And we're going to do glow sticks and not candles. But God will be there with us. And it'll be familiar. Here's the third thing that we learn out of this passage in Luke. Is find Jesus in anticipated places. Find Jesus where you think you would find him. And it says, and he took with him Mary. Joseph was anticipating he and Mary and their whole life together, and they had this child coming to whom he was engaged, who was now expecting a child, and while they were there, the time came for the baby to be born. And I've heard countless stories or sermons where people said, Joseph and Mary, they went to Bethlehem, they were unprepared, and this child came. Look, as a father of two children, you know a child's coming. Right? You may not know the day, but do you not think Joseph would that thought ever occurred to him? Wow, we might have this baby while we're traveling. Do you think they weren't thinking that the whole way? Do you think Mary wasn't thinking that the whole way? Like they were anticipating this child's coming. Our lives are going to change. Everything's going to change. So in anticipated things, some of you know things are going to happen. Things are going to change. Things are going to take place. And so you just need to embrace it and see that God can be in the midst of that. Donna and I have figured out that between this past year, with our lives, our kids' lives, the church life, and what's going to happen this next year, we're going to move 10 times. We're anticipating it, aren't we? She's so excited. Between my kids graduating from college and moving, and her girls are moving in a different phase of life, and they're moving into apartments and all these kinds of things. Look, moving's not my greatest joy in life, but I got to anticipate it's coming. And it's going to come a lot. And so I can get ready. I can be prepared. You know? And it's an opportunity for God to work in and through my life and the people's lives who are in my life. So what do you do in your life where you anticipate what's coming? Some of you are thinking about, as we anticipate moving into the new building and everything that's going to come there, some of you are anticipating this next year and what's going to happen and what are the next steps for your life. What are the life events? What are the places? What are the things that are going to take place? Do you know you can find Jesus in those? Do you know Jesus is already there before you ever think he's there? As you anticipate this next step, as you anticipate this next thing in your life, maybe it's a new job, maybe it's a transition in life, maybe it's something that's going to take place, maybe it's new people that God's bringing into your life. Even before it happens, God is aware. And he invites you to find him in the midst of that. Here's the last one that Luke has to share with us, and it's find Jesus in provided places. Find Jesus in provided places. What do I mean by that? Luke 2:7 says she gave birth to her firstborn son. She wrapped him snugly in strips of cloth and laid him in a manger because there was no lodging available for them. They spent the night in a provided place. Right? Which the innkeeper provided. Don't make the innkeeper the villain of the Christmas story. He provided what he had, and he gave them a place. Mary and Joseph figure out spontaneity, and they tear strips of cloth, and they tie the baby up for what they have. They provide. Right? And there's a manger there that was provided for the animals, but now it's provided for them. See, we often get all caught up in it's not the way I thought it was going to be, rather than embracing God is here in the way it's unfolding. God often provides for us in our lives, but it's not in the framework we think, and so we dismiss it or reject it. You find Jesus when you start embracing what's happening and see God in that and say, God is providing. It's not the way I would have provided, right? Because any situation I could give you, you would have a way that it would be handled, right? Right? Say you had 3 other people show up at Christmas. You would say, well, God, you can have those people bring a ham, a turkey, and this, and it'll all be good, and I'll be really excited for those people to show up at my house, right? But like it could be your neighbor and their electricity goes out and then they want to come eat off of you, right? You just need to know that God often provides for this. We have done, and I've had this ongoing thing where a tree snapped in her yard in the southern home. The southern home we had to take care of, not the northern home. So we have the northern home. The southern home's really nice, and it's sunny there all the time down in Westerville. Up here, it's cold. This went right before Thanksgiving. You know that big windstorm we had? It tore a third of the tree down. And then she's like, the rest of the tree's leaning toward the house. It's just going to fall on the house. So for the last few Fridays on my day off, I've been playing lumberjack, and I've been cutting trees. And we finally got the tree stuff all down. So all the while, and raking leaves and doing all that stuff, right? And so the northern home's been neglected. So we just been having. So finally, I got up there right before it snowed. Remember when we got that snow? The day before, I was digging ice out of my gutters because all the leaves were frozen in ice. But if I ran a screwdriver underneath it, I could break the ice. And so I pulled all that ice and leaves out of my gutter. And then it snowed, right? And then it got warm again. And so then we finally raked the leaves. And we're out there, and Donna's like, we got to get these leaves done and whatever. And it was past our leaf collection time, but they collect them. And so Donna said, we'll put all the leaves in my van. I'm like, does this sound like a good idea? And I don't know, 18 bags later, right? They were in your van. But we're out there raking, right? And I'm like, okay, we'll just get this done. We'll push it across the finish line. And my wife turns to me and says, why don't we rake the neighbor's yard? And you would think your pastor would have a really spiritual attitude. Like I did not see God's provision of time in this. I was like, we've finally gotten to the moment where we could get our own stuff done. I don't see this as God providing an extra 2 hours to help the neighbor. But it took someone else to help me see the provision. Because oftentimes you don't see what you already have. Joseph and Mary were put in a situation where they had to look around and see what they had. And they had a manger, and they had a stable, and they had strips of cloth. And God showed up right there with those. I encourage you today to not say, what don't you have? I encourage you to ask, God, what do I have this Christmas? God, what have you provided? What is it that God's given you this Christmas? And don't just, make that a mental activity. Think of that for a moment. And some of you honestly, not flippantly, honestly need to write my health. And some of you need to write a relationship. And some of you need to write a job. Some of you need to write the possibility of what a new year holds. And some of you need to say, God provided Jesus. Lord, this Christmas we're so thankful that you provided for us